Everyone, Temporal here, and for this session, we are reviewing a post that went up. This went up from, I believe that's Lucid, and they generally do good work, so I expect this to be good, but it's entitled Lane Priority, a Simple Diva Concept. I don't think I'd actually call it a simple Diva concept. If this is going where I expect it's going, I think it's a moderately advanced Diva concept. It's something that you have to do to get good value on Diva, but I don't think I'd have called this simple, but that's okay. We're going to get into it, see if they're describing what I expect they're describing, and see how they do at describing it. Because I expect this is a concept about, hey, what you're doing in terms of, let's say there's 3 lanes on a map, and how your control of a lane actually does act as protection for your back lane, or which lanes are important to control and how much freedom you get out of that. But let's take a look and see what they did. Okay, I want to make this post to illustrate a simple concept you should keep in mind when playing Diva. Many Diva players fall into 2 extremes. First, they play with their backline all the time and never learn to roam or take better position or deny flanks from the enemy. And this is incredibly ineffective. It was a very common way to play Diva. When the game first out, people think of Diva as the peeling queen, and don't get me wrong, she is really good at peel. She can boot people away. She can DM to prevent lots of different types of damage. She has a big, heavy mech. Like, Diva is really good at peel, don't get me wrong, but she actually doesn't do it best while sitting in her own backline. Some people fall into that trap of, oh, I can protect my backline from here. I can also DM forward to maybe protect a Reinhardt. This is great. Not actually that good. And then the second way, they play way too aggressive and are unable to peel for their backline when needed. And this also happens, where they're fully in, they're trying to get assassinations done themselves. Sometimes this will happen because they're helping their monkey a ton, but usually this is happening as a result of them going way too aggressive, trying to constantly dive people, trying to constantly get aggressive eliminations. And there's times when it makes sense. You are peeling for your backline if you are going deep to stop the Ashe on off-angled high ground. You are nowhere near your backline, but you are peeling for your backline and your front line by dealing with that soldier. But what's being referred to here is likely the situation of, I'm going to dive their Zen. I'm going to constantly try to eliminate their Ashe who isn't in a position to do a ton of work. Stuff like that. So let's see where Sorka goes here. And probably the main reason is a lack of awareness of where the enemy is, as well as the space that their team controls. Yes, the space that your team controls has a huge amount of influence on where you need to be positioning as Diva. You're a big factor in the space that your team controls, though to some degree, what your support line looks like and how heavy it is, what your front line looks like and how heavy it is, and what ults are on the table for both teams also makes a pretty big difference in where you position. Okay. However, understanding of the concept of lane priority, a concept that is well known in many MOBAs but still applicable to Overwatch, will improve your Diva a lot and make it easier and safer for you to roam away from your backline and help put more pressure on the enemy, as well as deny the enemy a lot of flanking options. Okay, I want to hear this explanation for this term that we're using, this term lane priority. Like, this is great, this sounds like something I want, I'm sold, tell me what it is. Excuse me. Overwatch maps can be roughly divided into lanes. Example here. Is this one of my examples, or did they make their own? They made their own. This is a perfectly reasonable example of lanes. I would point out that, let's use a third color. This is all this third lane here. But yes, this is a perfectly reasonable, like this is the third lane. This is the second lane. And sort of, including this, and then this really is our third lane here. So that's good. I'm good. This is perfectly reasonable visual example of lanes. Overwatch maps can be roughly divided into lanes. We saw the example. Some maps have more lanes than others. We saw in Sanctuary has 5 lanes. There are places on maps that have 5 lanes. I'm thinking about Sanctuary. Sanctuary with the drum. Does that really ever have 5 lanes? I'm not sure I agree with that one. I'm not sure I agree with Sanctuary having 5 lanes. There's places on maps that I would consider to have 5 lanes. I don't think I'd agree on that one. For my takes on what maps look like in their lanes, you can check on my channel. I have a playlist for map guides. They're some of the best content for leveling up if you're sort of stuck in Overwatch and you want to go, hey, I want to play better. I want to understand the maps more. They really change how you play in the map guides. We go over the power positions. We go over which lanes do a better job of wrestling you control of the next spot for the objective at what points in the map, as well as which lanes are most useful for which types of heroes. But we'll continue on with this one here. While maps like King's Row have as few as 2 lanes in certain sections, generally if something goes down to 2 lanes, it is very temporarily that it does so. It actually has a 3rd lane, but the 3rd lane is kind of broken. An example of that would be going into the last bend on King's Row 3rd, where it seems like there's only 2 lanes. It seems like there's only that mid push there. You've gone around the corner, and then sort of the room that the Mega's in of like, okay, this can be 1 lane, and this can be a 2nd, and, you know, because you can have gone in here to go down the 2nd, so this becomes 1, and this becomes your 2nd, and there's no 3rd lane. But really, there was a 3rd lane that could get you to here, this room that had a window, that you then hop out the window, then you have to go in lane 1 for just a moment, and then you hop back out because then there's a doorway that has a 3rd lane. So it's really a broken up 3rd lane, but the 3rd lane does exist. It's just not like a fully traversable by every single hero type lane. You can confirm I appreciate lane control. It makes me have less directions to have anxiety about. There you go. Okay, let's continue on through here. But usually we can separate the map into 3 distinct lanes. Yep, that is how most of the maps are designed. I agree, we do get as high as 5 in some places. I wouldn't quite say we get down to 2, but I don't strongly disagree with that characterization. And if I were going for 5 lanes, I'd probably go more somewhere like... No, it's really 4 lanes if we're going to like Havana 2nd. There are places that there's 5 though, very temporarily. I just wouldn't have said Busan Sanctuary, but that's fine. Much of winning a teamfight in Overwatch is about taking lanes more efficiently than the enemy, especially when you're playing a long-range comp or a dive comp. Yep, in most metas that aren't centered around hard turtling, and we've moved away from hard turtling because we've made sustain a bit weaker, lane control does a ton. Overwatch is either going to be about objective control or about map control. And for most metas, it's going to be about map control. Map control generally gives you better control over the objective. Objectives in Overwatch are mostly not put in highly defensible positions, in positions where you want your heroes to be. They are much more frequently put in places where, hey, this isn't a great place. Actually, let's use the example. This isn't a great place. This here is the objective. It's not a great place to be. I would so much rather be over here, be controlling this choke, be controlling this lane over here. This objective itself is not a terribly good place to be. And that's how most objectives are in Overwatch. They're not in good places. So generally, you want to control the space around them. And then once you control the space around them, you can starve the opponents and then take it from them pretty easily. But that's fine. Knowing this, what does lane priority refer to, and how does it apply to Diva in particular? I am very curious about both of these questions. I am sold on lane priority as a concept, I just don't know what it is yet. I do know what it is, but I'm, playing along here a bit. I suspect I know what we mean by lane priority. It's just not the term I use. That's fine. It's best to illustrate this concept by going over an example. Example. Void on Ilios Ruins. Fights on Ilios Ruins mainly revolve around fighting for the Mega. Let's take a look. This is the Mega. First fights frequently go around this, especially in Sombra metas. They don't always go around this, but they do frequently go around this, and they go around this even more heavily when Sombras are in play. So, yep, I'm with this so far. The objective is a scary place. Join the right lane, gang. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Semitic. Okay. So, fight on Ilios Ruins mainly revolve around fighting for the Mega. That's first fight anyway. Not only does the Mega will have a Mega, but it also overlooks the point and provides nice long sight lines for Zen to spam from. Sure. Not Zen exclusively. I think Zen does just fine spamming from, say, back here if he has to, but you can hop up on this, drop back, you have pillars that you can play with. But yeah, I agree that it is nice to take this. This is one of the better spots on this map, sure. Here, Shanghai are better with their rollout, so they managed to control the Mega before Glads. Okay, So Shanghai get control before Glads. We can see Shanghai Dragons are in red here. They're faster with their rollout. They probably used TP swap shenanigans plus Lucio speed boost. And, then we see that Gladiators didn't or something. Doesn't matter. We see this. They're able to firmly overload a lane, which is another concept. They overload this lane. They totally surrendered this lane, which is a little bit of an advanced concept, overloads, in order to firmly establish control on this lane where they would have caught a lone or a double flanker and beat them, in order to establish that, hey, usually this is done to hard win a duel, which is good. Like, hey, we're going to try to get an elimination, get a pick by catching you in a lane with our Sombra plus 2 other people, but it can also be done to get control of an important health pack, though it does mean surrendering and leaving your backline a little vulnerable. If they, say, went 2 people, like if they'd sent their ball down here and their Sombra around this way, your backline wouldn't be terribly happy. But that's okay. It's a calculated risk. Okay. So they managed to control Mega before Glads. Sure. Shanghai not only controls Mega, but can effectively deny Glads from taking control of Mega. Well, yeah, I mean, if they control Mega, the way Sombra works, you can't hack an already hacked health pack, so that does kind of work, and then it's really hard to take a lane from someone who has a hacked health pack to sit on. It's doable, but you've really got to beat them hard. You've got to use more people than they use. You've got to get a pick that you really heavily outplayed them for. There's a little more to it in terms of positioning, but what can happen is they can get sandwiched into this. They can end up in a situation where their backline has to rotate to join them, and if we're able to squish Shanghai all the way in here, so all of Shanghai is here, and we're then able to spread our gladiators out, where we've got like Sombra over here, Ball over here, and then maybe we've got Zen plus Brig over here, and then we've got Tracer over here. Maybe we move our Zen Brig over here. This could still go poorly for Shanghai. Like, if they let themselves get squished too much, they can still absolutely lose this, and that is part of the danger in this overload thing that they did. You can still out-concave these guys and win. But, yes, for now, we see what's being referred to here. I'm going on a tangent, but I think it's an interesting and important tangent. So let's continue. Can effectively deny Glads from taking control of the Mega. Take a look at this image. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit here. So, if Glads try to rotate to Mega, well, we've moved a little. We've moved our heroes a little bit from our last image, but if Glads try to rotate to Mega, Fate can punish them. Sure, and Diziaki can spam them out. So if they go this way, they're going to get hit by Fate and then spammed like this. I actually think the more important thing is that they are going to get pincered by the 2 DPS from here. I think that's more important, that they'd have to walk through a pincer, and that's how they've established this. But I actually am also interested and concerned in, like, I think we're highly underestimating in our explanation so far, and I know it's not the point of the explanation. Like, I know we're looking at something different, but, like, Tracer being here is a lot different than Tracer being here. Like, this Tracer is very different, and importantly very different than this Tracer. And this Tracer is creating a lot of safety for these guys right now. That said, this Tracer themselves is relatively vulnerable and probably can't stay here. So if Glads wanted to take this apart, they'd break the Tracer. I know, I'm getting away from what the explanation is supposed to be here, but I think we're skipping something important by having focused so heavily on what am I trying to say here? By having focused so heavily on, oh, we're safe by being here. We're not safe by being here. We're not safe by having the Mega, though the Mega certainly reinforcing our level of safety. We're in part safe because we're controlling enough lanes. Like, just controlling one outside lane isn't enough. You generally need 2 out of 3 lanes. And we're sort of trying to turn this into a third lane. We're like, hey, usually this would be lane 1, this would be lane 2, this would be lane 3, but we've sort of tried to force, and maps are flexible like this, we've turned this into lane 1 and this into lane 2, and then this is 3 and this is 4. So we kind of invented a 4th lane. But let's continue here. Here, Shanghai are better with the rollout, so they managed to control the Mega. Oh no, we saw that. Why? Take a look at this image. Fate's in position to punish gladiators should they ever try to rotate their backline onto Mega, and Izayaki can spam them out or place Discord Orb. Indeed, Shanghai pushed back Glad so hard that it would take them several seconds to rotate onto Mega. Take a look. Okay. Again, though, like, I don't want to underestimate how important it is. Like, these guys got through, and that's not great. But Ball, Sombra, and Tracer are now set up much better than they were in the previous image. And that isn't purely a result of getting this. So, I'm resisting a little bit. Okay. Indeed, Shanghai pushed back Glad so hard that it would take them several seconds to even rotate onto Mega. Okay. We can say that the Mega lane, the lane with the Mega, has priority. In general, lane priority is when your team not only has control of a lane, but the enemy is pushed back enough so that they can't contest the lane for the next several seconds. Okay, so we've defined our term. Lane priority is when your team not only has control of a lane, but the enemy is pushed back enough so that they can't contest the lane for the next several seconds. And that seems like it would be a really important thing to understand on Diva, right? Your team controls a lane, and your team controls it so effectively that enemies can't show up there for, let's say, 2 to 3 seconds, or they can't push up that lane for 2 to 3 seconds. It would take them time to get through it. They're not near it. So if you go wander, use boosters to do something else as Diva, your backline probably isn't vulnerable. I could see how that would be a really important concept to get to. I'm not quite sure I agree with how we got to it in terms of having this Mega being it. I thought we might be talking about which lane is priority in terms of the Mega being the more important lane here than the other lanes. Instead, we're saying lane priority is when you have control of a lane and you've pushed back the enemy enough so that they can't get on top of you, which is a fine concept. I'm not sure that's the word I'd use for it. Like lane locked to lane controlled, something like that. Lane control is important, but you know, lane control is sort of a big general enough concept that maybe lane locked or something would have been the same word, where you've a firmly established control that's going to last multiple seconds even if you leave as one hero. But okay. So that they can't contest for the next several seconds. When that happens, you as Diva can start roaming away from any lane that your team has priority. Sure. And start taking space on side lanes. In this example, this is exactly what Void does. So here's Void. I disagree. This probably got scouted. Yeah. I unfortunately disagree with this concept, which is unfortunate. So I don't think this is why Void is wandering. I think Void is going and getting control of this lane because they probably knew Tracer was over here. They had a guess that Sombra was over here, and even if she's not, just Sombra showing up on Zen Brig is fine. They have a Brig. It's only if 2 out of 3, Ball plus Sombra plus Tracer, so 2 out of 3 of those show up on your Zen Brig, that you're worried. If just one does, they should be fine almost every time, the exception being Pulse Bomb. So look at this and go, I don't think Diva's wandering over here because, oh, we've won this lane so hard, so let's go get a second lane. Diva's wandering over here because, like, now let me rephrase that. I actually would say it has to do a little more to do with, hey, we've won this lane, now I need to establish another lane. I don't think it's like, oh, this is safe enough, like, this is party, we've locked this down, so now let me go get another lane. I guess I'm just nitpicking a little, but like, I look at this and it's not because we've fully locked down this lane, it's because this lane is already being controlled. I'm being too nitpicky. It's close enough. So yes, but like in general, we're gonna go, I want 1 lane, 2 lane, and 3 lanes, and we've already established that Tracer and Sombra have this lane, so Diva needs to go get another lane. Not you go get to roam to offensively go do stuff, you are going to block this way because this was the only way in. If Sombra, Tracer, Ball all force their way this way, you're gonna have plenty of time to react because your Sombra, Tracer got to contest it on the way in, they got to shoot Ball on the way back, or Ball spent time fighting them, whatever, before getting in, and you're gonna have plenty of warning. So like, I don't necessarily agree with how we got here, but I suppose It's just slight tweaks in terms of how we're thinking about it and how we're thinking about terms, because that's not how I use those terms. But that's fine. We look at this, and what I would view as important out of this is, hey, we've got control. We have people contesting this lane already. We have ball sort of contesting this lane, because effectively we're going in 3 different directions. So we have to get some sort of control on this lane. And the truth is, Diva would be perfectly happy to not do this. We would be perfectly happy with a situation where we had Sombra Tracer over here, and we had Ball controlling this lane, and we had Zenbrig Diva controlling this lane. That would be perfectly fine with us. But this works. We see that this is the weak lane, so Diva's going up here. I don't really think Diva's going here because, yes, now I'm free to go here. I think Diva's going here more because they scouted Tracer, and even if they didn't scout Tracer, we were always going to have to go get this lane. It's not that Diva has freedom to hop into whatever lane she wants now. Diva's hopping into the weak lane specifically that we haven't already established control on. First name, last name says, yeah, once your backline is established, you want to control the closest flank. Sure. Okay. Okay. When that happens to Diva, you can start roaming away from any lanes that your team has priority in and start taking space on side lanes. Again, yes, you should take space, but that doesn't really just apply to Diva. Diva is a little more reactive. She's a little more secondary to go take a lane. She's not your primary lane-taking force the way that Ball, Sombra, and Tracer are in this group, and she might plug a gap and go take a lane that's weak. She might retreat from her lane. She's not going to go as deep on her lane as other people are, because she does want to be able to go back to her team or change her mind and all in on an attack if the team, pops rally and runs forward type thing down mid. The core does, that is. But I guess this explanation looks a little too much like you're free to go do whatever you want to go make those deep plays. And I don't actually think that is, I think this is Lucid's understanding. I think Lucid probably does have a proper understanding of you need to go cover shallow the lane that's not being covered. I feel this explanation, though, leaves a little too much room for people to misinterpret here. But that's fine. It's not necessarily being explained wrong. Roaming away from any lane that your team has priority and start taking space on side lanes. You can do it with mid lane too. It doesn't have to be the side lane. Diva does better on side lanes, but your side lane should be firmly established. I would be annoyed at my Hammond, honestly, for being controlling mid lane here. Truth be told. That's okay. You do gotta bully those Tracers. Okay. He looks to roam away from Mega and now tries to secure his team's other flank. Sure. By doing so, he draws aggro from both Kevster and Birdring. I mean, is he drawing aggro from them? I don't think he's really drawing aggro from them. I think he's pre-contesting them. And he would rather pre-contest them. You would much rather fight these guys over here and over here than over here. Because if you fight them over here, your Zen is more effective at fighting them, and they have to use movement abilities to get past you, and you get to shoot them in the back as they're doing so. So, again, I don't like this aggro term, but I am definitely being nitpicky. I recognize that. Okay, and deny them access to his backline. I mean, they can force their way past, but it's going to cost them a lot. Yeah. He's able to do this because he knows that Mega has priority. If Glad's tried to take Mega, it would not only take a long time and leave them vulnerable to engages by Fade and Fleta, but by the time that Void is pushed onto the lane Kevster and Birdring are using, he can simply pivot back and contest whoever is taking Mega. Let me think about that for a moment. By doing so, he draws aggro from both Kevster and Birdring and deny them access to his backline. Okay. He is able to do this because he knows Mega has priority. And again, our definition of priority means he knows that this lane is controlled and locked down in such a way that it would take them multiple seconds to get into the lane and then through the lane onto his backline, which is true. If Glad's tried to take Mega, it would not only take a long time and leave them vulnerable to an engagement by Fade and Fleta. Sure. But by the time that Void is pushed onto the lane Kevster and Birdring are using, he can simply pivot back and contest whoever is taking Mega. Okay. Why does he need lane priority to do that? Let's hear it. Now let's say Void decides to break off from Mega and contest the angle earlier into the fight. If Void goes here, Lee Jagon and Izayaki get run over. If Void goes here, no, I don't necessarily agree with that. If we are suggesting that if this team just runs forward, they're going to run over these two, if Diva's over here, I don't agree at all. I also don't think that's what's going to happen. I think this team is not going to hit a one-dimensional dive. Their Tracer's going to go this way. So even if this dive does happen in this one-directional dive, Tracer's going to come through this way. I should use yellow strictly because they're not using yellow here. If these guys go here, I expect that Tracer is going to go this way, and therefore our Diva breaking off and having gone this way is not going to be the end of the world. But even if Tracer doesn't break off and go this way, so let's get rid of Diva, and let's pretend that like a six-man comp, these guys try to run 6 people onto the back line. Diva being out here is still going to be like, okay, I'll waddle back a little, and I'll shoot inwards as my core kites backwards, as my ball hits them from the side, as my Tracer effectively kites outwards and shoots in as they try to run through here. Like, no, we're good. We still defensively have a concave here. I do not mind if Diva goes over here early. Hop back here. Say Void decides to break off from the Mega and contest the angle earlier in the fight. First, Mega is incredibly important to take. The Void has to help his team with taking Mega, or at least buy time for his team to push out any Glad players contesting it. That's why everyone on Shanghai, even Fade and Fleta, are directly frontlining and trying to boot Glads out from Mega. I mean, sure, the Mega is important. I'm going to grant you that, and I don't mind trying to overpower, and I don't mind having Void up there, DMing our Sombra while Sombra hacks Mega. That doesn't bother me whatsoever. That's not quite what's happening here, and in this screen, Mega is already hacked, so if in this screen, Void wants to leave and go over here, doesn't really bother me. Glads being so compressed seems not what their comp wants to do as well. It's going to take time for their flankers to try and set up. Exactly. This is not 6-man that we're playing against. This is a Zen and not a Moira that we're up against here. This isn't even a 6-man ball variant. This strictly is a Zen ball that we're playing against. They're going to want to split and dive. I am not worried about this comp just pressing W. This comp will be able to split, send people to the side, like Diva over here, like Tracer over here, like Ball already over here. These guys kite back and then get to shoot in. Like, this is not terribly vulnerable even if Diva leads. I'm good with sending Diva up here specifically because I like going, hey, let's DM to make sure that our Sombra's uninterrupted for the hack. But after that, I don't have much need now. The Void has to help his team with taking Mega, or at least buy time for his team to push out any Glad players contesting it. That's why everyone on Shanghai, even Fleta and Fate, are directly frontlining and trying to boot out Glads from Mega. Again, I don't really agree with this. I think they're trying to overload a lane because they wanted to catch someone that potentially showed up here and beat them, and they wanted to make sure there was enough chaos for their Sombra to get the hack, including the DM to protect their Sombra getting the hack. I'm good with that, but the next move was always going to be to get someone over here. And maybe we don't disagree. Maybe Sorka and I don't disagree here of, okay, yes, send this many people here, but then someone sends someone over. But I actually would have been quite fine if they'd taken a move more like Gladiator's move, where they sent their Tracer this way in the first place. Like, that would have been totally fine with me. There's a little bit of a guessing and checking on what's going on here. We're trying to rush this so much that the flankers don't have time to go around and get value on the side because we're trying to get this hack so fast, and we did, but this is mostly a result of our rollout being better, not a result of we sent 6 people this way as opposed to 4 people this way or 5 people this way and 1 person over here like the Gladiators did. This is mostly in that territory. First name, last name says holding Mega, though, it's wide open space for your Zen by establishing the statue and Mega as safe space for Zen. You're advantaged. I was going to read this post. Glad you're reviewing it. I think there's going to be a value to be had from this post, which doesn't surprise me. This person generally does good work, but I think there are some things here that I disagree with. So, wide open space for your Zen by establishing the statue and Mega as safe space for your Zen to be advantaged. This is a fine place for your... If you can get your Zen and your Brig here safely, that's fine, but you also need control of this and control of this if you're going to do that. You need to control the outside lanes to protect them. And that's totally fine, so we were always going to have to send someone here. And since we didn't send our Tracer over here, we're going to send our Diva over here. Since we didn't send our Hammond over here, we're going to send our Diva over here. And that's fine. I disagree with this assessment that we had to 6-man rush this for control of Mega. I think them getting control of Mega here had more to do with them hitting a better rollout. It would have been perfectly fine, would have cost them nothing to send Fleta this way, just like the Gladiators sent Kevster this way. Instead, this is not what lost this for Gladiators. The speed of the rollout is what lost this for Gladiators. And it's supposed to be rushed. This is first fight of the map. You know, you can see point unlocks in 15 seconds, but Gladiators are not going to hit a clean hit. This is not going to engage well into this because this comp is going to be able to split and shoot in if this comp tries to engage without setting up. This is mostly resting on the difference in rollout speed right here. Okay, let's jump back here. Okay. Second, if he breaks off now without priority, Glad can simply rotate onto Mega and immediately threaten Li Jaegon and Izayaki, while Void would not be in range to peel. No. Without the backline, no Discord Orb or Zen damage, Shanghai would lose the fight. Sure, if they lose the Zen without anything getting traded, they're going to lose the fight. I agree with that much. Void is helping his team gain priority over Mega before roaming to shut down the angle that Kevster and Birdring will use. Indeed, before roaming to intercept Kevster and Birding, he first helps his team control Mega and gives some breathing room for Li Jaehong and Izayaki to spam more out of Glads. No. I don't care about this. I don't care about this whatsoever. And again, if we go here, like... If Glads try to push, this has already been hacked, by the way, in this frame. We could wind it back a few frames, but like in this frame, it's hacked. And in this frame, the backline is here. This backline is pretty darn safe. Gladiators are going to take time to set up any sort of real dive. And if Void puts boosters on cooldown to go over here, I don't care. Because he can chicken waddle back and still shoot in. He can literally chicken waddle 2 steps as these guys kite out slightly in this direction instead of straight back and get protection. Like, in this frame, I have 0 issue if Diva is here. 0 issue if Diva is over here. I would prefer, and I would coach a team, if I was coaching a team, after they've overloaded this lane, to actually instead have probably my Sombra lane swap. That's, truth be told, what I'd probably do. I'd have my Sombra lane swap if I was coaching this, because I do want some control of this lane, and I'd prefer Diva not be the only one controlling a lane, because when you do have this lane priority, as it's being explained here by Sorka, if you know that your Sombra can tell you that this lane is clear, yeah, that does give your Diva a little ability to pay less attention in this direction and wander a bit more aggressively in this direction, or whatever the case may be. Or you can go, hey, we know that this lane is clear, so yes, I can wander a bit more aggressively here, or I know that I have to control this because we've got nothing controlling this, which is what's actually going on here. We don't have freedom to wander as Diva right now. This is actually the direction that we pretty much have to go as Diva, because all 3 of our flankers have overloaded the same lane. So we need to either sit on our backline or protect our backline in the other outside lane there. Those aren't really options. If we want to have some degree of freedom on Diva, we would need to know that, hey, we've got one lane contested by 1 to 2 flankers, and the other lane either contested or scouted by our 3rd flanker, and therefore we know that it's safe, that it's controlled, that no one's going to go in here. So I'm not liking this. I am not worried if my Diva is over here, even in this frame. If the opponents try to run in like this, they're going to get shot in the side. Diva's going to be able to shoot them in the side. Boosters come back quite quickly, and my team can kite out just fine here. I am not remotely worried about getting run over. Okay. Uh-huh. Control Mega and give some breathing room for Li Jaegon and his Yagi to rotate and spam out Glads. I'd like him having the crossfire for spam. How about space? Let's look at what Void's counterpart space has to do. Right here, Glads have no priority over any lanes. Okay, where's my right here? Okay. Shanghai have taken advantage, have taken Mega, and then had made sure to zone out any side lanes. Space doesn't want to be stacked with his backline. He wants to be trying to take Mega control or point control. So let's look at this from Space perspective. Space wants to take space. Okay. So if I look at this, no, if I'm Space right now, who's missing? Here's my Hammond. Here's my Tracer. Where's my Sombra? Where's Birdring? Is Birdring over here where he should be? Birdring's not over here. Maybe we've already lost Birdring. I don't know. But, like, what I have to do as Space is I have to go, hey, I'm going to sit roughly here. My backline is in this general space, and I'm lightly trying to control the lane. I can't control the lane out here because it's too weak and they have too many ways to our team. They've got 2 different routes that they can take to our team, and I don't like that. So I have to contest close. I probably want to chicken walk in rather than booster to here, and I can't go here. If my team had some degree of control of this lane, I could go out and control over here, but they don't. If this wasn't a good lane to pass in, or the Tracer was further away, I could potentially go, hey, I'm going to go over here, and that would be better. But right now, this is not wildly wrong for where Space wants to be. Space doesn't want to be much further away than here. And the problem is, again, where's Birdring? He wants to be trying to take Mega control or point control, but if he does, Shanghai would simply collapse on his backline. Does he go do that? Well, yeah, I mean, this is the dive that would happen. This is a 3-pronged dive. That much I agree with. This is a 3-pronged dive. That's what we want to do, or we've sort of set up for. It's not fully the end of the world, because you'll notice that this ball is being threatened by 2 people here, so this person is not going to get to cleanly dive. So this lane is effectively shut down, and yes, we are in a situation right now. This is really a different situation. Again, I don't know where Birdring is, but this is a situation where, yeah, we can't go out and far contest this lane. We wouldn't spend boosters to far contest the lane. If we were already over here, we might stay over here, but we're not spending boosters to contest the lane right now because someone else has close proximity to our lane, and we might not know where Sombra is. And if Tracer and Sombra are both right here, that would be a problem for us. That said, if we could already be out here and have boosters back or most of the way back, that wouldn't be the end of the world. Okay. He wants to be trying to take control of Mega or point control. Point control is probably our least interesting. You generally want to get control of the outside lanes first, and he'd only want to get point control if Birdring Sombra had control of the Mega lane. Not necessarily Mega. Mega's already hacked in the wrong direction. But at the very least, we would need our Sombra contesting the other lane before we'd think about pushing the mid lane with our Diva. Okay. But if he does, Shanghai would simply collapse on his backline. Indeed, Space tries to fly to Mega, but without lane priority, Fate simply collapses on his backline. Wait, Fate? Fate collapses on his backline? This is a different, like... Fate was contested, guys. If Fate is the one collapsing on your backline, my issue is not with Space. My issue is with... Wait, Fate collapses on his backline? You've lost me. Fate can't. Do you mean... Fate tries to collapse on his backline? Right, my issue is with Muse, and Kevster. Like, Fate is contested. Fate might get in here, but Fate is going to get in here with, like, no health, or Fate is going to be followed in, getting shot in the back the whole time. I don't... It's not remotely Void's, or excuse me, Space's job to deal with Fate at this point. Like, yes, of course, you'll shoot him when he gets there, but tell me more about why 1, 2, 3, 4 people are not able to handle Fate coming in here. Okay. Space tries to fly to Mega, but without lane priority, Fate collapses on his backline. Now with only Brig to peel it off. This is complete. No, that's not what's going on here at all. This fight is over. You've already lost Birdring. I guess Birdring is just now getting back or something, but Birdring's been missing in action for who knows how long, and now Kevster got eliminated. So, like, Fate getting on top of your backline is because you already lost Kevster, not because your Diva roamed. This is not, like, the next thing that happens. This is quite a bit later, and I don't really appreciate that. So, here we are. It's that far ticked down. Here we are. It's not much further ticked down. I suppose I could go back and look at the match to get it, but that would take too long to do on stream right now. Again, I look at this, and this is because Kevster's already gone. Plus, we're now in this situation where Kevster's way over here. Kevster went for an aggressive dive, while I think they were light on resources. Well, I think Birdring was missing, doing something, who knows where, rather than staying with his marked targets. He tried to swap lanes for an aggressive play, and their aggressive play didn't work out. This is clearly they tried to make an aggressive dive. Gladiators went, hey, we're not going to play this lane control game, and we're going to melt you, and we're going to make you take a bad dive, and then burn you, peel effectively. Nor was it a, we've won our lanes hard, and now we've pushed you guys back into a tight little thing like this, and now once we've softened you up, we're gonna dive. Those are both perfectly valid options. This is a rushed dive from Glads, and this is an offensive dive. We know that our Tracer was over here, and our Diva was over here, and our Tracer went in, and what happened here clearly is that our Tracer went in and our Diva went to support the aggressive dive because we decided that our way to win this fight was to trade backlines or to dive their backline effectively. This is not a mistake from Space's part. This is a mistake if Space is macro calling, it's a mistake from Space's part. It's them trying to force a dive, but this is not, strictly speaking, a mistake from Space here. Now, could you say, hey, in this situation, would I have in Space's shoes gone, hey, I don't really want to dive. Lee Jae-gun doesn't have rally. Shu doesn't have trans, Skew doesn't have rally, things like that. Might I have considered? I might have, but I don't really have issue with Space's dive here. This is clearly them going, we need to hit an alpha dive rather than a peel dive, or rather than play it slow. And the truth is, if you try to force dives from your lanes when you don't have better lane control than the opponents, when you haven't forced them back into a box like this, you tend to lose. When you force them back into a box, you now hit from multiple directions, or you can poke them from multiple directions and then dive. I don't care which. Okay, let's continue here. Wants to try and take Mega at point control, but if he does so, Shanghai would simply collapse on his backline. Indeed, Space tries to fly to Mega, but without lane priority, Fate simply collapses on his backline, now with only a Brig to peel it off. I mean, a Brig is enough to handle ball. I'm not worried about one diver coming in. Another small example. Soul are threatening to engage on Shanghai's backline, and Void has to stick with them because Shanghai has no priority on the lane Shanghai is threatening to push from. Let's take a look. Void. Okay, so no lane priority. Void must try here. Think about this for a second. Soul are threatening to engage on Shanghai's backline, and Void has to stick with them because Shanghai has no priority on the lane that Soul are trying to push from. So Void is here. Void is trying to stay here because, I mean, this isn't a priority thing. This is, again, Void is controlling this lane. If we think about our lanes, and here's our map, so we're in a situation now where we've set up additional lanes, but we're in a situation from Dragon's point of view where we would like to threaten these guys from here, we would like to threaten these guys from here, and we would like to threaten these guys from here. Fine. And on the outside, Dynasty broke past and looped the map, which is very easy to do on Koth, and are going, hey, our version of this is we're going to threaten you from here, we're going to threaten you from here, and we're going to threaten you from here, or maybe just from two directions. However you want to think about it. That's what they're looking at here. But if we look at our lanes from Dragon's perspective, we've got a lane here, we've got a lane here, and we've got a lane here, and Void is holding this lane, and this is exactly what I wanted on... Let's try. This is exactly what I wanted here, where it was totally fine for space to hold about here-ish, to hold about here-ish. You know, you can hold a little bit to the left of your group because you're shallowly trying to contest the lane. You can't go deep to do it because you can't afford to be without boosters, but you're shallowly trying to contest the lane here. And that's exactly what we are looking at here, where this is a shallow contesting of the outside lane here. So I like what I'm seeing from Void. This is correct. We can't hard dive them, of course, because I'm not going to hard dive these people unless my Sombra and Tracer and Ball are also diving, but I'm not even going to hard dive them then, truth be told, because I know that we got people behind us. I know where Tracer is, but I don't see Ball, or we've scouted Ball and no Ball is behind us, and I don't see Sombra. So there's the possibility of two flankers showing up on my back line, and if that's the possibility, I'm probably going to want to stay in a place where I can maybe micro in from here, push this lane a little, but immediately booster back to help with this lane. I might chicken walk my way in, or in this situation, what's really going to happen is I'm perfectly happy to go, hey, let's six-man push this. There's no reason that I can't six-man push this where we're going to dive from all three directions. But it's not just Diva that's going to go in, it's all three that are going to go in this way, and we're happy to do that because we have support ults. So do they, and it'll be a messy trade, but we're happy to hit this dive right now, including our backline walking in. And if our backline is walking in, and if we have support ults that can protect our support line in a pinch, we're, again, perfectly happy to go in like this. Especially when we know where their Tracer is, so their Tracer can't stick our backline. Okay. Would has to stick it with them because Shanghai has no priority on the lane, so all are threatening to push from. Sure. That is until Fate places mines. Fate places mines. So we've got this. We've got Fate putting down mines here. And putting down mines here protects this lane, we're saying. We're saying the lanes protect the mine. Sure. Really, we just want to engage in this, and I would be upset with my supports if my supports are not walking into this minefield to go fight. But that's okay. To block the lane priority and gain priority on that lane, which allows Void to split apart from his backline and contest point. I don't care about contesting point here. Win the fight. Like, yeah, you don't want to drop point, but, like, I don't really care about this. I'm perfectly happy to go fight these guys. I'm perfectly happy to go fight these guys. I can send Diva to go contest point. Like, that's not the worst thing in the world, but... like, this contesting of another lane... sure. I don't really consider this contesting another lane at this point. I consider this anchoring point at this point. Like, we were happy to hit our three-directional dive onto this backline, using our minefield and all that. We were perfectly happy to do that. Yes, they were going to sustain through it with support ults, and you see they're using rally, but, like, that's fine. We ultimately win because we minefield, they rally, you know, we therefore get to rally later, all that good stuff. Like, we're okay with this. By knowing that his team has priority on that lane, Void now pushes another lane and is able to buy his team breathing room to escape Soul's pincer attack. His team wasn't any more vulnerable to the pincer than the other team was. Lane, lane, lane. Lane, lane. And if you want, I can go like this, but it's going to be slow. Lane. His team is not any more vulnerable to a dive right now. In fact, Dynasty is in worse shape right now than Dragons. Dragons are winning this fight right now. I would much rather be Dragons in this situation than Dynasty. Will there be advanced temporal videos that isn't a map guide or mini guide? Maybe. Probably, yeah. But I like to keep most of my stuff digestible unless I'm responding to other content and then I go deep. But I do things like I do owl game reviews. I'll do long form content. I just generally won't go super, super deep on like, let me spend 2.5 hours on a topic that isn't reviewing a game, for example. I actually try to make it a little tighter when I'm covering stuff. But you can see stuff like I've covered I've done probably a 15-minute guide on May Goats versus Doomfist Goats within the last year. I've done how to play Brawl into Poke and how to use closed space and stuff. And I used Forgiver versus whatever Sydney Drop Bears. I'm forgetting what their team is currently called because they have different ownership group now. I did a video example on that. Like I do other stuff, yeah. And when it comes to more advanced guides. Okay. Okay. By knowing his team has priority on that lane, Void now pushes another lane and is able to buy his team breathing room to escape Soul's pincer attack. If he were to keep staying stacked with his backline, Soul would have been able to easily close the pincer on Shanghai, and they would not have been able to kite. Okay, let's see our example. No. Like, yes, I agree that this is worse positioning for Dragons than they had before. I totally agree with that. But, like, I'm not super worried about this. We have a minefield over here that is mostly making this a not real threat. And we have our Tracer and our Sombra threatening their Tracer, who's going to have to out basically immediately, much more effectively than their Ball and Sombra are threatening our Sombra and Tracer, who are trying to remove this Tracer. I'm still okay being the Dragons right now, even if Fate stays right here. Or Void stays right here. Not the end of my world. So would have been able to close the pincer, and Shanghai would have not been able to kite. Sure. Conclusion. A lot of off-tank players are inspired by Void and his aggressive style of Diva. Unlike many other Diva players, Void isn't afraid to play split from his backline. I mean, most professional level Diva players aren't. Professional level Diva players understand this concept. We wouldn't have used the words quite how they've been used here, but sure. I think if we're referring to many Diva players like across the ladder, yes, most of the ladder and even much of GM is very wrong about their understanding of Diva. So sure, most is totally fair here. But you might ask, how does he do it and keep his backline alive at the same time? The answer is lane priority. Understand it like Void does, and you will dominate the game. So the thing is, I actually agree with this. I agree with this overall concept. And this overall concept, again, not what I'd have done. I'd have done more like lane locked or something like that. But the overall concept that we're getting into here is effectively this. Which image do I want for this? Cool. Effectively this, where we get into a situation where, yes, we understand that our team took this lane, so we need to bolster the other outside lane a little bit. Like, that's what we want to do. Like, I agree with the main takeaway here that this lane is covered, so you actually can afford to wander a little bit because your team is, your backline, the people you're interested in protecting, are no longer being threatened from 3 different directions. They're only being protected from 2, and the reality is they're really not, you're not too worried about a team going through here, because if someone goes through this middle lane, when you control both outside lanes, because you've got these guys over here and Diva over here, they're feeding. They're feeding because the best defensive kite in the game is I get to kite back while I get to my teammates get to shoot you from the side. So like this is good. Understanding this is good. Understanding that because you've taken this lane is locked, or priority as we've been put it here, because this is priority, we can afford to take the other lane. That is a good concept. What would be even better is if these teams were playing in such a way that we had, hey, I have ball plus tracer over here, and Sombra's tying this lane up, and now I can go reinforce and catch someone over here, reinforce and catch someone over here, or I can play a little bit further forward and then boost back, whatever, to get some more meaningful poke, to go do a little bit of scouting, whatever. And the reality is I'm then going to take the three of us, including Diva, and just walk over their backline if we force their tracer back, if we force their Sombra back, whatever. So, like, I actually strongly agree with the overall point that is being made by our author here. I just unfortunately disagree with the examples, and I think they're unfortunate examples. Yeah, like, I really think it was a bad tangent to go down, this concept of, oh no, we can't, if we are, who was it? If we are space, we cannot go over here. Yes, we can. We can absolutely go over here. We don't want to go over here. And I think, like, calling out this dive is bad is, like, it's bad from a macro standpoint. It's not bad from a space standpoint. This was clearly them just saying, try to brute force a dive because we're down in this fight. That's what happened here. But again, getting control of this lane is fine. The general concept here is a very good one. Like, it is a very good one of, hey, once your team is locked down A lane, you can think about, you need to, as a, like, tight end, as a fill-in type player, because that's what Diva is, you need to think about plugging up the lane, even if you do it shallowly, that they haven't covered. And once they've taken good control of both lanes, then you've got a lot more freedom. And you can afford to plug up a lane even a little bit not shallowly in a situation where, like, you're able to get Diva over here if you've scouted where the opponents are, when you might have your three flankers over here. Or maybe you have two flankers over here and one flanker here. I don't really care. You can do that because, hey, now you are contesting someone coming through this lane to get on your backline simply by being here, and you are trusting that these people aren't going to break so badly and so quickly that someone can get through them and eliminate your backline. Like, you just don't care at that point. Your team is feeding. If they can get brute force through and your backline loses before you can make it back in that situation. So, perfectly fine to play a little bit away from your team once your team is controlling at least one lane in 3-lane situations, if you can get control of a second lane there. You do not want to booster away when the other team is already ready to dive like this, because yes, you'll get crushed. But if you can find clean windows to booster away, that's fine, and you can sort of, as like a tight end type Diva player, go plug up the gap, plug in the gap, go do that sort of thing. And if your team can control 2 different lanes for you, preferably 2 outside lanes, you're basically free to do whatever you want. Not 100% free to do whatever you want. You still absolutely need to factor in, is there a Sombra? Does your team actually know, have good scouting information of where the tracer with pulse bomb is? But you're a lot more free once your team has map control. Okay. So, yeah, that was interesting. I usually find myself agreeing a little more with this player, or with this coach here. I do agree with the major concept that is being gone over here. Again, I just don't think these were terribly good examples of the concept, and I wouldn't have gone with lane priority. I'd have gone with lane locking or something like this. Lane priority, to me, has a lot more to do with, hey, this lane is priority over here because it has the mega, because it's the most important lane for this portion of the map. You know, mid lane is generally least prioritized. This would then be secondary type things, like first choice, second choice, third choice type thing. That's more what I'd think of for a term lane priority. But hey, I don't get to pick everything. Okay, if people have questions, go ahead and throw them up in chat now. If you think I've been totally unfair, way too nitpicky, that's just fine. Throw them up in chat or let me know in the comments. Yeah, let's take a look here. Can confirm, appreciate lane control. Yep, there you go. The objective is the scary place. Join the right lane gang. Was going to read this post. Glad you're reviewing it. Happy to. Yeah, they're both clumping like you said. It seems rushed. And again, that's not super weird. You can absolutely establish lanes for your first fight, you absolutely can and should before actually taking your first fight. But this first fight on this particular map is mostly like let's try to ward each other off while we hack this first mega type thing. And really, again, this had a lot more to do with the rollout being better than it did the lane decisions that happened. Like, it was perfectly fine, and I do mean perfectly fine, that in this situation that we saw Kevster go over here. This is no problem whatsoever, and it also wouldn't have been a problem if we, instead of seeing Fleta here, had seen Fleta over here. That would have been no problem whatsoever. I do like the Diva here for the potential to cover your Sombra with DM while she hacks the mega, because that mega is important, but it did not need to be some let's send 6 this way. Is there a roadmap checklist of which skills are required at which rank? No, because different people get to their ranks in different ways. I know people really like that type of concept because people want it to be simple. People really want it to be yes, I need to do this to go to the next thing and this to go to the next thing. And you can see some content creators have done that sort of thing. It can work okay in single player games, and I mean multiplayer, like online, but like chess, you need this to sort of have this skill before you move on, because there's clusters on the ladder that just won't let you through. You're not going to be able to win enough to move through the MMR if you don't understand this concept. And you can run into that, or if we were talking StarCraft 2, where, hey, you're not going to be able to move past this rank unless you scout appropriately. This rank will not let you past if you don't scout properly, because there's just a big enough cluster of proxy gate play that you will get crushed. But that works in 1v1 type scenarios. In the messy 6v6 that is Overwatch, and how there's a ton of variance in the skills, and because people get dropped in the middle of the ladder and not at the bottom, it's really not that sort of game because of all of the variables, where it's like, yes, you must master scouting before you move from silver to gold, or you must master warding before you move from gold to plat, or you must master lane control before you move from plat to diamond, or the thing that's going to move you from diamond to masters is really going to be locking down your ult tracking, that sort of thing, or hey, really understanding duels and 1v1s and not forcing them if the opponent isn't already weakened is what's going to move you from masters to GM. That doesn't really exist in this game. This game has too many variables, mostly because it's a team game the way it is. Okay. How do I know I haven't missed skills I should have learned at lower ranks? Would Master have told me, or will he just tell me normal things to work on? Well, I'm always going to. So if people go get coaching from me, because I do paid coaching, you can join my Discord in the description below to see what rates look like, what sort of promos, special events we have, all that good stuff. If you get coaching, I'm going to point out what are your biggest gaps or your easiest to fix gaps. I'm going to try to get you the most improvement in some ways, the most improvement for the least amount of effort, the least amount of fixing that you have to do, with some exceptions where I will sometimes have you work on something that I don't want you to stick as a bad habit, because it's really hard to unlearn that habit later, and that might not be the most gains immediately. But generally, I'm going to be focusing in on your biggest gap. So it doesn't matter if you got to diamond, for example, you're a Mercy player. So if you got to diamond with really good Valks, with really good movement, with some good shot calling, and with ult tracking that is actually mindful, like you're actually making decisions based on the ults that are available, great. You can totally get to diamond with those skills as Mercy. No problem. And then it might become clear in diamond that, hey, your weapon play is really weak, and also your res decision making is bad. And this isn't you specifically. I'm not saying these are your weaknesses. But even though we could upgrade your ult tracking more, we could upgrade your Valks more, these are bigger gaps, and upgrading them is going to get you more total gain. So, like, how do you know that you didn't miss anything? It doesn't matter. If you get to Diamond or Masters or whatever, like, it doesn't matter that you missed stuff. In fact, it's kind of easier to fix things that you have big gaps on, because even getting a You can get like quite a bit better at them quite quickly compared to, hey, I need to make my movement better. Well, once your movement's already pretty darn good, making it 5% better, if your movement is like a 90 out of 100, going from 90 to 95 is generally harder than going from 20 to 40, right? Even though that's like more total points of improvement. So, yeah. So I wouldn't really worry about what you should have learned at lower ranks. Mostly, you need to achieve a certain total value to your games that leads to enough wins to be able to move up. And if you're achieving that, you'll have built up some skills, and it's not weird for you to be, hey, I'm good at some things and I'm worse at others. Okay. I think we can go ahead and wrap it up there. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do drop a like, consider subscribing if you haven't already done so, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.